Now to today's event, which it's wonderful. It's a happy event. We won't talk about any, censorship, violence, populism, all this. We're going to talk about no violence, joy, happiness, freedom. And to do so, we're delighted to have Emma Slade, who had an incredible career in banking and who all of a sudden became a nun. Without further ado, please welcome Emma Slade. Do
I have to press the button, or is it just going to work automatically?
I don't know.
Okay. All right, but I'm a giant. All right, well, lovely to see everybody here today. Thank you very much for coming. It's a great honor. When I lived in Hong Kong 20 years ago, I used to walk past this building with a sense of awe, and I can't believe I'm here speaking at it now. Thank you for everybody's helped, Hilda, Florence, and Julien, to make this event possible. So what I've done is I've put together a short presentation with lots of aspects to it, because I wasn't sure what you'd be most interested to hear about. And so I'm going to do a little bit of my story, a little bit of Bhutan, a little bit about the charity that I established for Bhutan, and then I'm hoping you're going to have lots of fascinating questions for me, which could be on anything that I might be able to talk about. So, Awakening, the Magic of Bhutan, is my title. We're going to start, if this moves. Right, there we go. Okay, now there's a few people in this room who even remember me looking like this, which is quite interesting. So here I am in New York, actually. I'm working on MBOs in New York at this point, 1995, and my cousin Edward, Alex, and also a ghost from the past called Mike. This is how I was looking. After New York, I came here to live in Hong Kong and eventually worked in emerging market debt securities with somebody called Michael Roach. We were managing just under $1 billion in extremely exciting domestic currency investments. And my blood pressure was significantly higher than it is today. And as you'll discover, for those courageous and generous people who have bought the book, unfortunately, despite this very sensible and safe and financially successful career, for some odd reason, I did end up being held hostage in Jakarta in 1997. And this image really is the best image to describe just how terrifying that was. And so I talk about that in the book as a terrifying but in the end very useful experience. And really my life since then has been about looking more deeply at life, because following being held hostage, as you can imagine, I had some pretty big thoughts about how I wanted to spend the life that I thought I would lose. So having survived, then I really began a process of thinking much more deeply about what I wanted to do with my life and contribute to the world. Now, that's not to say that I didn't enjoy being super flashy in Armani suits. I need to tell you that I did. I was then, as I am now, highly analytical, highly energetic, and that hasn't changed. There was nothing wrong with banking. I want to get them on my side, Florence. But obviously, after this event, I did have to think again. So I'm not going to go into that in too much detail. You can ask questions. It was a gradual process of change from there, which eventually led me to Bhutan, the Himalayan kingdom, the last remaining independent Himalayan kingdom. Obviously, there was a whole series of them previously with Sikkim and Ladakh and Mustang. Bhutan now is the last remaining kingdom of the Himalayas. And I've put here a photo of myself with my teacher. This is my Lama. There's no picture of him in the book, but when you read the book, you'll, I hope, chuckle as you get to know him and this extraordinary relationship between a highly energetic, highly educated Western woman and Lama, who had never left Bhutan and had done 4 years in solitary retreat and spoke some English, but not a lot. And it was him, the Lama Nema Tsering, who instructed me in 2012. He said, now you change your dress. So the idea of becoming a nun was not mine. In fact, prior to this statement, he'd never even mentioned it. He just said, now it's time you change your dress, knowing that I was a serious Buddhist practitioner at that point. I was obviously very amazed that he had the faith in me to become a nun, that he had seen that in me. It was an amazing moment. He says that I have the mind of a nun. That's probably because some of my speech is quite loud for a nun. Some of my actions are quite kind of brash for a nun, but I think I do have the mind of a nun. So here we are together in Bhutan. Here I am looking very serious in the Thimphu Valley, quite near the large Buddha, if you've been to Bhutan. And this is just to show you that being a nun is extremely good fun, but is also quite a serious occupation that has taken a lot of study of classical Tibetan. This is my prayer book. You can see it's quite weighty. And so for about 3.5 years, I did intense practice, many hours a day. And here I'm probably just doing my daily prayers, reflecting on the preciousness of human life, the nature of impermanence, the responsibility of our actions, and the importance of a peaceful mind at the point at which the soul leaves the body. That's the starting point of every day of practice for me, those 4 reflections. So to begin to bring some of the magic of Bhutan to life, this is the Punaka Dzong, and this is actually where the ceremony was held for me to become fully ordained as a nun. So this is again mentioned in the book. I'm the only Western woman to be ordained in Bhutan, and it's a great privilege to have this opportunity. You can see these amazing structures. They may remind you of Potala Palace in Lhasa, so similar Dzong structures that you would see in Tibet. And these enormous buildings don't have any nails in them. They are just built by magic, I think. And they are a combination of the civil like local government for the area and large bodies of monks. So they're both government and spiritual. So people would go to a Dzong to do prayers if somebody is sick, but they would also go to the Dzong to settle a land dispute, for instance. This particular Dzong is built at the point where what's called a male river meets a female river, which for a long time I thought of as an auspicious place, but apparently it's not auspicious, and that's why you need to build a Dzong there. So kind of surprised me. So here we're at about 1,000 meter altitude. This is quite low for Bhutan. It's very hot, and if you go in the summer, you're bound to get some mosquito bites. Just to give you a little more flavor of the beauty of Bhutan, here we have something you're going to see very often in Bhutan, prayer flags. And they will have the 5 colors of them. You can see green, yellow, blue, white, and red. This symbolizes what in Buddhist terms is known as the 5 Buddha families. And they always stand for states of mind. So we have 5 negative states of mind according to Buddhism, which actually links back to yogic texts which predate Buddhism, if you've read any of the ancient yogic scripts out of India. So we have 5 negative states of mind which need to be transformed. So anger needs to be transformed into patience. Jealousy needs to be transformed into the celebration of all that everybody does, etc. So these 5 Buddha families actually represent mental states. Prayer flags would be put up everywhere in Bhutan, particularly in high places where the wind can catch them and the prayers written on them can be spread widely. They would also often be put on bridges over rivers with the idea that the river also would carry the prayer and spread it widely. And so they're very beautiful things to see. This is one of my favorite photographs from Bhutan, although I have to admit I shouldn't have taken it. So don't tell anyone that you saw this today if you're going to Bhutan. So this is in a Lakhang near Barrow in the west of Bhutan, and these footprints in wood are 500 years old. They're left by a very serious practitioner, and they're very inspiring to me. Somehow they speak to me. I'm sure you know that the Buddha asked never that his form was made into an icon. And so originally in Buddhism, to represent the Buddha, it was always a footprints. That's all that represented the presence of the Buddha. You didn't initially have statues of a seated Buddha. So there's something about this image which really speaks to me. Obviously it's very magical, and children always want to know how it happened. So who knows? This is just a Lakhang. This is actually in one of the villages that I've helped in Bhutan. I just like this idea of the path leading up to the Lakhang set against the sky. Hope you enjoy it. This is a little retreat house high up in the Har Valley in the west of Bhutan, which I walked up to. I don't often walk, but if it's to see something like this, then I make an effort. So this is what you would commonly see in Bhutan, which is a cave, a natural cave in the mountainside. And what they do is they just put a front on it. So it looks like a house, but it's not a house. This is just like a stage flat, you know, like those flats they use in theatres, you know. It's just put on the front, so when you enter it through the right side, then you actually enter a large stone cave where the retreatant lives quite simply. And it's always very wonderful if you get the opportunity to visit a long-term retreatant practicing in the mountains of Bhutan. Now this is in southwest Bhutan. This is a place called Maritsamo. I bring it to your attention because it's in the book. And this was really the rural village that inspired me to realize that not only did I want to practice in Bhutan and gain from the country, but I did want to give back to it. And this is a relatively poor rural village, and you'll understand when you read the book what happened there. It's also the village where I had the opportunity to have a private audience with the king of Bhutan. I happened to be there, and he made an official village and was very surprised to see me there. So I had a wonderful audience with him, and that large field you can see there, that was seated with many, many people from a wide area around. And then at this end of it, they had like a medieval tent with flags, etc. And so I was invited to sit in the tent with His Majesty, and then musicians and what do you call those people in medieval times, like jokers, like that's it, like jesters. made music and jokes between me and the king so that our conversation could be private, but everybody in the audience could enjoy seeing us together. It was very special for me, as you can imagine. So I went on to found this charity for Bhutan. It's called Opening Your Heart to Bhutan, which wasn't something I expected to do, because I really thought I was just going to hang out and be a peaceful person doing prayers, but, you know, I feel I have to help. And this is a child in East Bhutan with cerebral palsy. And so in the end, my work is mainly involved in helping children of great need in Bhutan. As a result of my efforts, I had the great honor to meet the Duchess of Cambridge in Bhutan, and was extremely nervous to meet her. Just about stuttered my way through it, and she's totally beautiful, and I was hugely honored to meet her. She obviously has a lot of hair compared to me. Just to give you an example of some of the things I've achieved this year for the charity, this is a brand new 32-seater school bus for the special needs school in Thimphu that I help. And it was just a joy to be able to get the bus for them, so you can see I'm very happy in that. I was very honoured, as you know, to receive this Point of Light award from the Prime Minister of Great Britain, and very cold because I received it in January in Bhutan, and as a monastic it would be very rude for me to cover my right arm, so even in sub-zero temperatures for Thimphu in January, so if I look a little chilly, that's why. On my right side there, so left side as you look at the picture, is the Foreign Minister of Bhutan wearing the traditional scarf of a minister, and on my other side is just the most extraordinary human being if you haven't met him. This is the Michael Rutland OBE, the British honorary consul to Bhutan, who's lived there since 1974, and was the tutor to the fourth king of Bhutan, and just knows Bhutan inside out, and is now old enough that he has no politeness and just says exactly what he thinks, and we get on like a house on fire. So I'm extremely determined to help a lot of children in Bhutan. I can't stress that strongly enough to you today. And a sign of my determination was that realizing that it was going to be hard to make a huge difference unless I did everything I could, and I was encouraged to write my life story, which up until that point I hadn't really spoken about. A few people here in Hong Kong at that time knew what had happened to me, but once I'd recovered, I didn't particularly see the need to talk about it. But I wrote my story, which was originally called The Bee That Flew Out of the Jar. And that's still the epilogue of the book. If you look in the book, the epilogue is called The Bee That Flew Out of the Jar. But the publisher said it was a bit of a long title, wasn't very snappy. So despite the fact that I come from a generation that remembers Born Free with lots of lovely lions, yeah, I know, I took the plunge and called it Set Free. And that's largely how I feel today, I can say. Obviously, all the money from the book goes to the charity. Yeah, that's why I can stalk people unashamedly. And so this is the name of the charity, this is the website, and that's the end of my talk.
Thank you very much, Emma. You're probably the happiest speaker we've had in the FCC, which feels good. Yeah. Now, I'm sure we have questions.
Oh yeah, please, questions, anything.
Okay, let's start here. Sarah there, please introduce yourself.
My name is Sarah Cotillon, and I am a psychological counsellor. So
okay, I don't need your help.
No, okay. No, I'm going to ask for your help, Emma. So I want you to give me some insight. So the experience in Jakarta, you got better, you came back to Hong Kong and sat down at your desk at the bank again. Can you talk through the process and the time it took to move from, no, I don't want to be here, I can't be here, and starting your journey in Bhutan and your new life? Can you talk how you transitioned?
Well, that's the book, right? That's the book.
Oh, okay, you're not gonna tell
that's
us
the
about
book.
that. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, what can I tell you? That's the book. You have to hope that you have an experience in life which leads you to wake up. Yeah, that was my experience. And I started to wake up. Yeah.
Question just behind there.
Hi, I'm Kylie Chan. I work for Dow Jones.
Okay.
I was recently in Bhutan for the first time last month.
Fantastic.
So I got the scarf.
Oh,
And I wore it
fantastic.
today. I'm also aspiring to become a nun one day, or I'm keeping a mind open.
Nobody ever says that to me. Fantastic.
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so short hair is a start, is it? You're
it's
kind of
a
on the way,
start.
is it?
I actually want to shave it, but I guess I'm still working in the corporate world.
Okay, yeah, no, it might, people might start to ask if you need to sit down or get a glass of water. If you have normal clothes and shaved head, people tends to worry people. You need to go the whole hog.
Right,
okay?
right. Okay. I'm very interested to know how you found your master and the path of becoming a nun. So before you get ordained, what are the credentials of...
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, now,
becoming
I have been extremely lucky. My path is quite unusual, so there's not a, set route to it. I think having, as part of my journey, really, inwards and outwards, I practiced yoga, all forms of yoga, for a long time. And I'm sure you know that yoga, the word yoga, Sanskrit yoga, word means to connect with, in brackets, the highest aspect of yourself. That's what yoga means, to connect with the highest aspect of yourself, yeah? And so in the West, practicing a lot of yoga and breathing and meditation, etc., I made a lot of progress. And at the same time, realized that my Buddhist practice, particularly the practice of compassion, the teachings on compassion, which I found very profound and deep in the Buddhist tradition, are far greater than in the yogic tradition. The science and the understanding of how the mind works with compassion is really considered in the Buddhist tradition, and it's very fascinating. So I probably kind of reached a bit of a ceiling in the West. I kind of wasn't sure how to go forward with this, And I was just really, really lucky. So I went to Bhutan in 2011, and as you'll read in the book, I had this coincidental meeting, which was very, very profound, and off I went, So I'm very lucky that at the point at which I had reached a cul-de-sac, something came in to help me, you can say. And as I say, it was my Lama's instructions for me to become a nun, and it was one of those kind of magical things, I think, that happens in the Himalayan tradition, As I say, we hadn't discussed it at all. And he didn't ask my opinion on it in the slightest. He didn't say, how do you feel about being celibate now? Or anything like that, Because I guess for him it was very clear this was the right path, and luckily it was. But if you have any internal questions like that, like, could I be celibate? Could I not be celibate? Then you should refrain. Because if there's any internal conflict and you're living under vows, I think your life will be very unhappy. So the mind, which is going to take vows, really needs to be very free of those dilemmas. Yeah. I don't know your personal circumstance, you don't need to tell me, but if you're going to be a nun, you need to be celibate. So I don't know if you came with a husband, but he's probably really shaking in his boots at the moment if you did. But that's obviously a big path, because Individual desire. Yeah, it's not really part of a nun's existence. Yeah, you're dedicating your life to others, absolutely, 100%. Yeah. Did I answer your question? Do you want to know anything else? I mean, to the actual ordination ceremony, I didn't write in huge detail in the book because it's quite sacred and I didn't feel I wanted to do that. I did go on for quite a long time, was all in Tibetan, and was really amazing. Yeah. Yes. It was, it's quite a long time. You have to want to. You have to want it like, when you're really, really hungry, you're really, really hungry, you're 3 hours late for your lunch, and you just would eat anything, right? Like, oh my God, give me anything. I don't care. I hate cheese sandwiches. Give me a cheese sandwich. That kind of ravenous hunger. You have to approach a spiritual practice with ravenous hunger. That's the thing. Okay.
Well, I have a question then.
Oh.
I was wondering, is there anything that you miss, not necessarily as really missing it, but regret in this previous life that you left behind? And also, what is the connection and how do you look as a Buddhist nun to the world that you knew from before?
There's absolutely nothing I miss. That's not because I don't think your life is great, but for me, I've gained so much that I've lost nothing. I've just gained so much. I don't see what there is to miss, really, to be frank. But we all have a part to play in this world. I'm deeply grateful for the people that trained as pilots that can fly me to Bhutan. Without them, I wouldn't be able to get there. I'm deeply grateful for people that make me beautiful food. We all have a chance to work together, right? And obviously, particularly running the charity, using some of my old skills in a way to run the charity. I'm very moved by some of the acts of kindness and support that people give me now. And yeah.
But I was also wondering, because you had this call for Bhutan, and for example, for the children of Bhutan, clearly in your own country there would be lots of children in need as well. But for some reason you feel a stronger call to Bhutan because it's where your new religion is.
Yeah, I mean the situation of children with special needs in Bhutan is very. It's a lot of suffering. 3/4 of children with a disability in Bhutan never even go to school. So the situation is far more severe than in the UK, where we have made such a huge amount of progress with allowing everybody in society to find a meaningful life. We've lifted most people up. Yeah. But in rural areas of Bhutan, medicine is a long way away, and you're in a world of subsistence agriculture. If you're born with a disability, life is going to be quite tough. So I just I guess on some level, when I was being held hostage, if I can relate it back to my story, I think when I was being held physically hostage, so kind of trapped in my own body, just in a room with a man with a gun, the kind of complete loss of any control over my own life and my own body that I felt was very profound. And when I encounter children in Bhutan who through their situation, in many ways where they live and their body and their medical condition, they seem to be trapped in a way that, I don't know, it just speaks to me, and I feel I need to help. Yeah.
Actually, you also mentioned to me before that you came, the reason you came was to speak about mental health.
Yeah, yeah.
And before, a few years ago, some of the members here may remember we hosted Mathieu Ricard, who is a monk, a Buddhist monk, and he also works a lot on the brain and happiness, etc. Can you tell us a bit more about that? How does Buddhism relate to mental health?
Oh, yeah, that's a fantastic subject. So, yeah, I was invited back to Hong Kong on this visit to speak at the conference for mental health that was going on. And I did a number of talks there and did some teachings also. So I think one of the things that's very fascinating about Buddhism is, particularly in the Himalayan region, with its geography and its isolation, was the way that practitioners really studied the nature of mind through their practice. And this study of mind now seems to have a lot of links to cutting-edge neuroscience in terms of the plasticity of the mind and how parts of your physical brain expand or contract according to your thinking and your actions and your circumstance. I mean, it's very, very fascinating. And so, as you know, His Holiness the Dalai Lama works with many neuroscientists, and Daniel Goleman, who wrote the book about anger and et cetera, et cetera. So I think it was very interesting to be at this conference and have many interdisciplinary discussions with specialists in scientific fields and encounter many interesting parallels. I had some fantastic conversations. Obviously, in the developed world, a slightly crude phrase, but in the developed world, you can say that we have a great opportunity now to concentrate on understanding the nature of mind, because many of our physical needs are fairly well taken care of now. Many of our material needs are fairly well taken care of. And as you know, the marginal utility of happiness graph shows us that physical and material happiness lessons. You know, you have one cake, it makes you feel happy. Second cake is all right. Third cake, you start to feel unwell. Fourth cake, you want to throw up. So we know that the next area of excitement, of development of the human being in developed countries is likely to be in the area of understanding the nature of mind, both if it's in a state of not wellness, or if it's in a state of really leaping forward. Has that made everybody go silent?
Recipe for happiness. Is there? We still have time for, I guess, one question. Kate, thank you.
Oh, there's two questions over there. Yeah.
So we'll have time for 3 questions if they are short enough. So in the room, Kate is just here.
Thank you. Hi, Emma. I met you before.
I know
Sandra.
you bought my book. That's why I'm saying you can come first with the question. Yeah.
Thank you. I bought 2 books.
No, I know.
Well, you know,
Can you introduce yourself, please?
Okay, my name is Sandra Lee, and I'm actually a student of the master's program at the Hong Kong U for the Center of Buddhism. And I'm also a woman in finance, so I very much appreciate your talk.
Oh, you're like my cousin, is it? We're like
exactly.
Yeah. Okay,
we have
good. Yeah.
a lot of
Good.
common interests.
Good.
And
you know, smart people need to study Buddhism. Smart people. Yeah.
That's one thing that impressed me very much about, especially Tibetan Buddhism. One of the things that attracted me to study Buddhism is actually meeting all these amazing Tibetan monks and nuns and leaders in that discipline who are not only humorous but very kind. They're very witty, and you can relate to them in so many ways. And so I was very personally inspired by that. But I was wondering, in your journey after, I guess you had your awakening and you were looking for sort of that spiritual journey, what in particular attracted you to Tibetan Buddhism? There are lots of different disciplines that you could have gone to. So I wonder if there's anything in your past, or was it a calling? Because Tibetan Buddhism is very special.
It is very special. No, so from an early age, actually, I was interested in Buddhism. You'll discover in the book that my grandfather, who was in Burma, had brought back a reclining Buddha a golden reclining Buddha. So the house I was born into had this reclining Buddha in it, and actually from a young age I insisted this Buddha come and be in my room, and painted my bedroom like a golden colour, and which didn't go well with my mum because she liked magnolia. But so I think actually there was quite a strong calling there for me, you know, from an early age. But I suppose having had an experience of the mind being so traumatized, seeing what the mind can turn into from trauma, I think the images and the writings on meditation, I just thought, you know, this is not airy-fairy to me, this is practical. This is a tool I'd really like to understand here, because I can see the potential for the mind to change and develop. And so I think seeing images of humans seated, cross-legged, their hands resting in each other, their eyes down, it just fascinated me. Yeah.
Kate. Two quick questions, actually.
That's fine.
I wonder how your family has responded to your change, and also
can ask my cousin Edward. He's over there. Yeah.
And also how much time you spend in Bhutan. And
yeah, so I go back and forth from the UK and my charitable fundraising and teaching and speaking to Bhutan. I like a ping pong, and my family has been really, really supportive. I think seeing is a natural process of development. In fact, my mum, who's quite a character, one of her friends, we were sitting down for tea, and one of her friends said, you know, celibacy, you know, you're very young to become celibate, you know. And my mum, before I had a chance to say anything, my mum said, oh no, this is much better. She was useless with those boyfriends. Right. So I was like, right, okay, I think that's a vote of confidence in becoming a nun. So they've been absolutely fine.
Oops, so we would have time for one more question if there is.
Yeah?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah,
that's
just here. Well, we have two, so you brush them in.
Thank you for your questions. You know, it's really nice to have questions.
I went to Bhutan probably about 4 years ago, and I don't know if the guide was, the guide's English wasn't good and I misunderstood or whatever. But he told me that the way reincarnation works in Bhutan is that people live with it in their daily life. So, like, if your father dies, he might be reincarnated as your next door neighbor's son, kind of thing. Is that true? And if it is, what kind of impact does that have on culture? And
Do you mean, is reincarnation true? Is that your question? No.
No, it's not necessarily is reincarnation true. It's if there is that belief system in Bhutan, how does that impact people's sort of interrelations with their neighbor's son who's been reincarnated as their father who passed away?
I hadn't heard that precise description before, I have to say. So, you know, reincarnation of a human shouldn't really be seen in separation, you know, because everything is in a cyclical process of being born, thriving, getting to the autumn, and going, right? I mean, everything, animals, trees, anything with prana is in that process. So I think it's important to not separate the human condition out from the nature of reality, living reality, yeah? So I'd say that, first of all. And I think that a notion that the human being is actually a very profound organism with aspects of it that are not fully visible is very useful, because it makes you approach people more respectfully of what they might fully be. And certainly, if you have the mindset that, you know, you might be my father, come back, or something like that, you're going to approach anybody far more respectfully and friendly. So whether it's right or wrong is not really so important as the effect it has on your mind, and it probably makes you more open, more respectful, and more friendly to all beings around you. So I think it can be very helpful.
Well, it's a wonderful way to finish this talk. We'll keep this in mind when we interview anyone next time. And well, it's just time for us to thank you very much and give you a little token of appreciation. And please join me in thanking Emma.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you very much. Oh, is it to sign books with? Exactly.